All right, let's get started. Hope everybody can hear me. Thanks for attending the Microsoft Entra Permissions Management, formerly known as Cloud Knox. My name is Nathan Mertz. I'm a senior architect for Oxford Computer Group. Who is OCG? We're an identity-driven security company. We deliver long-term value-added services for identity and access management, and IGA and data protection. We've been in the security space for about 19 years, deploying identity solutions and hybrid identity solutions from on-prem Active Directory to Azure Active Directory. We have over 900 enterprise projects that we have delivered around the world. We have been Microsoft Partner of the Year 8 times and Savient Impact Partner of the Year twice. Savient's another IGA IAM solution. We've been named Top Federal and SLG Partner, Special Mentions for External Identities and Regional Systems Integrator at 2022 Microsoft Entra Partner Recognition Awards. And we have deep connections with Microsoft Cloud and Savient engineering teams. What we can provide you, planning and assessments, workshops for identity and access management, governance, security reviews of Active Directory, Azure AD. We can do deployment services of on-prem Active Directory migrations, Azure AD, hybrid solutions, Office 365 migrations. We are heavily focused with identity and access management and IGA solutions, being Microsoft Identity Manager and Savient. And we have a managed services that we have a nearshore resources that help with our identity and access management and can help your identity and access management that you have at your current organization. So what is Microsoft Entra Permissions Management? Microsoft Entra Permissions Management, formerly Cloud Knox, is a cloud infrastructure entitlement management solution, CIEM, that provides comprehensive visibility into permissions assigned to all identities. What does Entra Permissions Management offer? Entra detects, automatically right sizes, and continuously monitors unused and excessive permissions across cloud services. It does Azure, Amazon Web Services, and Google Cloud Platform. Those are the 3 cloud platforms that Entra Permissions Management brings in the entitlements and different roles from those different platforms. Scattered identities. Organizations have to consider permissions management as a central piece of their zero trust security to implement least privilege access across their entire infrastructure. Organizations are increasingly adopting multi-cloud strategy, just like AWS, Google Cloud Platform, and Azure, and are struggling with the lack of visibility and the increasingly complexity of managing access permissions. With the proliferation of identities and cloud services, the number of high-risk cloud permissions is exploding, expanding the attack surface for organizations. IT security teams are under increased pressure to ensure access to their expanding cloud estate is secure and compliant. The inconsistency of cloud providers' native access management models make it even more complex for security and identity to manage permissions and enforce least privilege access policies across the entire environment. So what is the Entra Permissions Management? What are the features? Entra Permission Management Solution contains 3 major features. It discovers, it remediates, and it monitors current access across your different platforms. In the first 2 silos, identity and entitlements and roles, we have discover. So Entra brings in permissions across multiple cloud services. So you can manage in one location. So you have AWS, Google Cloud Platform, and Azure, and you can see all those permissions in one like pane of glass. Entra managed service entitlements, service roles as in multiple entitlements across applications and group entitlements. Customers can access permission risks by evaluating the gap between permissions granted and the permissions used. Entra can show which permissions the user has been using, and if they are not using permissions, it will display what the user is not using, or will show if they are using access to resources constantly. So the second piece, remediate, there is two columns here. Access is brought into Entra for the applications for the different platforms, which access can be requested, and we'll show the process. I'll show the process later, how we can request access to the different platforms entitlements. Resource access and group access. For review, access review, I can see and validate access in Entra. Access removal, I can manually remove access or automatically remove access. Access remediation, I can right size access based on person and or add or remove based on usage. Access policies, which can be defined to terminate, is automatic. I can set that up to be automatic, so I can configure a policy to, in 90 days, remove any access that is not needed. And then the third or the last fifth column is monitoring. Auditing. Entra has reporting capabilities to view access across the cloud or specific access to a resource and what that access is on the resource. Customers can detect anomalous activities with machine language powered alerts and generated detailed forensic reports. And those reports can be downloaded or sent via email if needed. So overall, Entra deepens zero trust security strategies by augmenting the least privilege access principle, which allows customers to get comprehensive visibility, discovering which identity is doing what, where, and when. Automate least privilege access, use access analytics to ensure identities have the right permissions at the right time. Unify access policies across infrastructure as a service, and implement consistent security policies across all your cloud infrastructure. So that's a high level of what Entra Permissions Management is and what it contains. Now I'm going to just show the first screen of the actual Entra Permissions Management portal. And then after that, I'm going to go through a demo. So as we can see on this screen right here is the dashboard, which provides the permission creep index, which is an aggregated metric that periodically evaluates the level of risk associated with the number of unused or excessive permissions across your identities and resources. It measures how much damage identities can cause based on the permissions they have. And you can see the heat map here from left to right. The bluish green is, low to medium creep index, where there's maybe permissions, very little permissions, and on the right side is where I'm definitely over permissioned. So the PCI is a great indicator of an organization's level of exposure to insider threats and risks, and then their ability to enforce the principle of least privilege. So the next piece of this is the actual demo. I'm going to do an overview of, yes, that was the first dashboard screen of kind of what the permission creep index is. And then I'm going to do permissions given and not used, an approval request for a user called tester, and then the admin reviewing that role, and then the requester role, and then approving that role, and then removing the role from the admin. So I'm going to do like a just-in-time access that can be added and removed at any time. I'm going to show the autopilot feature, the reports, and then the alert triggers. And then if there's any questions during this time, make sure you put them in the chat, and I will go through those questions at the end. As you can see here, this is the permission creep index again. I can see the different platforms. So I have AWS, Azure, Google Cloud platform. And as you can see, as I click through these, I have different identities and resources that are displayed from the import in from those different cloud services. And as you can see, AWS, I have the least amount of privileges here. If I go back to Azure here, I can see different views of these reports. I can see the different trends. I haven't done anything in the last month. So the user creep index has stayed the same. On this same screen, I can show different super users. I can see inactive users, over permission active users, inactive apps, different resources that have been imported into the system. So if I go into super users, I can see exactly the identities. This is in the reports tab of inactive identities, super identities. So I can select these identities and I can see the actual permissions that this individual has. So for Azure, these are the different roles that have been set up inside of Azure for this user, and it's an admin user. The different tasks, so it has the different tasks that the user has access to, and you can see they're all in red here to the left. That means they are, kind of pretty much over permissioned. And then what they've actually used on the right. So even though they have these permissions on the left, they have not used them. And I can see the activity of the user in the last 90 days of what they've actually used. And then the resources also that they have used. And then their permissions is pretty much the role on the roles that were given on the first page. So as we can see from the dashboard, we can see all the information that was brought in. We have analytics, so I can have different analytics of the different platforms. So for Azure, I can bring in the different user. I can see the different user analytics. So I can see all my users and all the different roles that these users have. And I can see what are the actual active roles that are being applied. And I can do the same thing for AWS. So then I have the remediation section where I can view the permissions also. Then I can actually take action on those different permissions that were granted. So as we can see on this screen, I have the ability to actually add roles, remove roles, add different tasks, which could be entitlements. And I can actually do quick actions where I can revoke unused tasks, revoke hide tasks, and delete tasks, or just assign read-only tasks for a particular role. I have role policy templates. I will go through a really quick demo here of how I can request access as a user to this specific role. So I can set up different templates. So this access right here, I'm going to give access to Azure Active Directory. As we can see, these are the different tasks that the user has the ability to get access to. Since I've already created this role or this template, this is the one that we're going to use. I don't have to recreate it. And then we can see the different requests that are being made in the system. So I'm going to kind of log in as a different user. This is my test user, already logged in. I have different permissions that can be set up for the portal. This user only has the ability to look at Google Cloud Platform and Azure. They do not have access to AWS. But I'm going to provide them the ability to request access to Azure Active Directory. So I can create a new request. Select an authorization system, that's Azure. My username, that's me. I'm going to request, I can request different roles here. Ones that are not using the template, request different tasks, and request using a template. Since I have a template, and in my template I have specific permissions and entitlements already set up, I selected those, put them in the role access, then I'm going to request this access. I have to provide a request summary why I need access for this resource. I have optional notes if I want to enter those in there. I can actually create a schedule of when I need access. I can do it currently. I can do it right now. I can do it just once, daily, weekly, monthly, and then what kind of length of time do I need this? I only need this for, let's just say, an hour. And then below, I can see the access that I'm going to be given. My selected scope is Azure, my Nathan demo, and then I'm going to submit this. And my request was submitted. I can see my pending request here below that I just put in. I can see the details of that request. And when it starts, it has not started since I need approval for this request. So I'm going to go back in as my admin. I'm going to see the request. I'm going to hit, oh, here it is. For the demo, my request that was put in, submitted by the tester on behalf of the tester, and schedule ASAP, and go to details. I can see that same detail screen of what they're requesting and what access is requested. So I'm just going to go back in here and I'm going to hit approve. Hit approve here. And this is the one for the demo. It is inactive. I'm going to go back in as the tester. I'm going to look at the approved request, and it says activating. And also, we can see the approval email was sent to myself, which is an admin, and was requested by the tester. So I get the kind of a email chain of what's going on also. And then I'm going just to wait for that activation. Still active, completed. I haven't done anything, so I'm just waiting for activation. So I'm just going to wait here a little bit. Go into the admin screen to make sure that this is running correctly. So this actually goes out and reaches out to the system and provides access. So it could take time, should be immediately. But of course, since this is a demo, it's taking its sweet time. I'm just going to go in here and see if I can kick this off real quick by doing a collection of data. This screen right here is by different data connectors to my different Google Cloud, AWS, and Azure. And this is the configuration, and it lets us know if the actual endpoints are online. And I'll go through this screen here in a second also. Let's just go back to the approval pieces. Mediation, request, approved. Okay. And of course, it's just taking a sweet time. Yep, here it goes. I had 60 minutes to actually complete this task. It actually came in. I've been approved. The active tasks went down to 0. Completed actually set up my access. So I have the ability to go in and do anything I need to do inside of Azure AD. Let's just say I went out, I did my work, completed that out in a couple minutes, or let's say 30 minutes. I can request that to be canceled, or I can cancel it myself. As an admin, let's just say I accidentally gave access, or I gave too much access, or I provided access and for an hour and only needed a little bit of time. I can go in here and I can actually cancel this request also. Not only the user can do it, but I can do it as a administrator. So I can cancel this. It will go out and it will process the request. So this is my demo request and it's being canceled. And I can go in as the my test user and always hit refresh so I can get the latest updates. And again, I got another email saying that I have canceled my request, just so we have that email audit trail also. And for the demo, my access has been canceled. So that's how we can look at the different, create a role policy and have users have the ability to request access to the different cloud services. Going back in as the administrator, I can look at the autopilot session permissions. So in autopilot, I have the ability at the different cloud platforms. I have the ability to remove Azure permissions, or any kind of permissions. So here I have AWS, I have delete unused roles. Azure, same thing, unused applications, identities, unused service accounts. I actually have one set up for Azure. I actually have it turned off right now because if I look at this rule, I have the rule to go in, and anything that's unused, it will remove that access in 90 days. And it will do it immediately. Also have auditing, so I can look in and see what has been, what is being done at the different systems. So I can do search what's happened in the last day in Azure. I can see that myself, I've logged into the different, like a virtual machine, or I've been looking at or adding changes to the VM. So it's actually a resource, changing different permissions also. So I actually started the VM, and I can actually export this information also into a comma separated file if I would like. And then that information would be emailed to me. And I can do that for all three of these systems. And for the platform itself, being Entra Permissions Management. And I can export this information also. So I can see the login information and what people have actually done in the system. And when I selected export, I got an email with all the information that I requested, and it provides me a report name called Audit Trail. So I can select that and download everything that's happened in the last 90 days for the for Entra Permissions Management. Also have reports. So these are out-of-the-box reports that I'm showing you right now. That shows you the different permission, what category being permissions, what the authorization systems are, and you can select generate and download. And what will happen there is it will generate the report, and you will have the ability to you will get an email with that report, and you will be able to look at it in your email. All of these system reports can be downloaded, but the permission analytics report actually shows us the report for the different platforms. This is AWS. The good thing about AWS is it actually shows you a permission creep index kind of report that can be used maybe for management. So a nice graphical user interface of my low permissions on the left and my high permissions on the right here in this table. Identities with high PCI score have 0. So I'm actually doing pretty good with this. The other reports for Azure and Google Cloud Platform do not show this nice little summary. I don't know why that is. Microsoft does not have that for the other platforms. But we can see in here we have inactive identities. Let's say if I'm looking for Azure, I can see identities that just aren't being used. I don't log into the Azure portal. So those just come up as inactive identities. I have inactive groups that are, but I don't have any inactive groups for Azure. But super identities I do. I have the account that I'm using, Nathan Mertz, and then my admin account, and it shows me in the report what this is. And I can select my user like I did before, and I can see all the different permissions and the activity for that user. So you can see the my unused activity. And this is the account that I'm logged into this portal right now, the Entra Permissions portal. Then everything that I've used on the right is everything that I've actually used inside of the Azure portal. And then my activity also for this user in Azure, and the different resources and the roles or permissions that are configured inside of Azure. Let's go back to the reports, and we have over permission active identities, service principals, serverless functions. I don't have any of this information because I don't have that. I don't have anything configured. But if I go into the Google Cloud, I should have service accounts. You have to create a service account to get the connection from Entra Permissions Management to Google Cloud, and this is I have been granted a lot of permissions just for this account, but says I haven't been using it for 90 days. And this is an account that I used also for Google Cloud for the demo, and it shows the roles and permissions of this user also, and what I'm using it for and what I've used it for in Google Cloud. So the reports are pretty powerful and can be downloaded, and we can create custom reports also. I have two custom reports right here. I have the ability to after let's just this API test just shows me the different users. That's what's going to show me if I download that. But what it really does, I have the ability to download report settings, like who is going to actually get this report, like via email, when this is available, when this will run. It can be daily, weekly, monthly, and who I share this with, which is who else is going to get the email for this report. There are some other additional, I'm going to go into kind of basic configuration of this. You can set up different, since we only have AWS, Azure, and GCP, you can set up multiple Azure tenants to be managed. Same thing with Google Cloud. I have one Google Cloud platform, but I have multiple projects that I configured and set up in this solution for this demo. This controller status, enabled, disabled. This means in this enabled state, I can configure Google Cloud Platform, Azure, and AWS, where I'm just reading in the permissions and the roles from those systems, but I'm not actually making changes to those. So when I request access through an approval process, it will give me access. When this is controller status is set to disabled, that means I'm giving it just kind of read-only access. That means I will not have the ability to actually request access and make any changes to the downstream system. So like if I need to remove access based upon over permissions, I would not be able to do that if the controller status is to disabled. And then in that when the controller status is disabled, that means you're really just giving read permissions to those platforms. So you can just kind of see and report on what's going on and not really providing, administrators or the Entra Permissions Management to make any changes to those platforms. The licensing here is so there's a licensing for Entra Permissions Management, and it's based upon kind of compute, like what is actually taking processing power. So here for Google Cloud, I don't have anything configured. AWS, for Azure, I have one compute, I have one VM configured, so that is considered to be one license. And these are, Azure functions, containers, Kubernetes, databases, SQL servers, all those are considered, would be considered licenses if they were brought in. In my AWS, I have EC2, I have only one VM over there, and that is considered a license. And this can show you the inventory of my instance, my EC2 instance, if it's AWS, and then my Internet Gateway 17, Azure, same thing, I have one virtual machine, the different networks. In Google Cloud, I have nothing. So that is all I have for the demo. I just hope everybody enjoyed getting a high-level overview of what permissions management is, what it can do. And if anybody has any questions, I'm just going to stay on the line to hope to answer any questions that you may have. And thank you for attending. So how does the licensing for databases work for Azure SQL Managed Instance, Elastic Pool? So if we go into the licenses, we can see that Azure SQL. So if you had a SQL database or SQL servers configured, that those would be counted as a license, and then there would be a cost associated with that license based upon your agreement with Microsoft. And then this screen would help determine what databases and elastic pools would be would count as a license. So the question is, does Entra manage permissions for other resources besides the ones which are billed and licensed, and for Azure AD roles also? So it does manage permissions for resources that are not billed and licensed. I have in my demo, as you can see, the Azure AD that I have, the permissions and roles that I set up for that, those are not billed. Now, if you cannot bring in, it will not connect to an Azure tenant that is not licensed. So you will not be able to see those Azure roles. So you have to have a subscription to actually bring in any of the roles from that subscription. So I can actually look in my Azure right here, inactive apps. If I have this correct, this is just the permissions management access, but this is just a role that is not, this is assigned to the application for Entra, but does not count. So if I had another specific role, that would show up and you would not be billed for that. If I can maybe find a different, better example. Yeah, so I have right here for tester, I have reader roles, and for my admin also I have owner, virtual machine administrator login role information. So it is not tied to an actual resource. It's just a role that is given, and there's no cost to that. But I do have to have an Azure subscription. Same thing for Google Cloud. All my whole demo is free, by the way. I mean, my Google Cloud platform free, AWS is on free, so I'm not paying for any services on that side to run any of that. For this demo, Azure, I have a subscription to Azure based upon a free Azure subscription that I needed to get this to work. If there's no other questions, I just want to say thank you for your time. If you have any other further questions or you would like to discuss this more, please reach out to us. I do have a, let's see, from this slide. Thank you. You can reach out to info@Oxford Computer Group. We have Twitter, Facebook, and we'd be more than happy to help.